Hello there, and welcome to Think the Maker, a podcast about heroes, princesses, scoundrels, hokey religions, ancient weapons, and all things Star Wars. I'm Adam Russell.
And I am Mike Forster. We are back from Celebration. Adam, how's your jet lag?
Now, this is pod racing. If you're watching, that's what I'm wearing. Celebration, that wasn't just a pun, a joke about what I'm wearing. This brilliant new Roosevelt's pullover, the pod racer design. But we also got to do, I don't think we talked about it in our recap, but we definitely streamed a video. It's Instagram Reels. We went live on that while we were trying out the new ILM Immersive. It's not ILM X Lab anymore. We called it out wrong. The new ILM Immersive game, Beyond Victory, it's called. Yep. No release date yet, but it's like a third-person tabletop pod racing game for VR for MetaQuest. It's so fun. Go watch us checking it out. I also shot a video of Mike doing it, which we'll cut together and make a little better thing coming up. But dude, we had the best time at Celebration. How do you feel now that you're back to the real world?
Well, the jet lag is I've been every second that I haven't been like unpacking or doing something, I've been sleeping, like just taking naps here and there, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And it was great to see everybody. We're fully rocking. While I'm shouting this out, of course, the May the Force collection, or the Season of the Force, Power of the Force collection dropped from Roosevelt's, which I'm wearing the hat. I was wearing this yesterday.
Sickest crew neck sweatshirt, sickest bomber jacket. This line, I even messaged, or I commented on their post today. It's one of their best lines ever with Star Wars.
It's
in
a
terms
banger.
of like a whole line, everyone hitting hard. Love it.
I'm also like, this is my first bamboo. There haven't been a lot of Star Wars shirts in the bamboo, and I'm
fabric.
Bringing summer at a breakneck speed because it was so nice in Japan, and it's still a little miserable here in Michigan. So the Rogue, if you're feeling extra Andor-y, that Rogue One Scarif, the Shore Troopers drop was awesome today. And it comes in the bamboo, so I'm gonna probably pick that up. And my other thing to show off, because this is the one thing that I'm probably most impressed of in terms of my own doing coming back from Celebration, was getting these back in one piece.
Oh, the prints. They made it so no creases, no
creases, folds. Nothing. And this is the what's cool about this, you can see like the gold outline on there. So this was their like traditional I think it's called a Yuki board.
You mean the material that it's
the material, it's thick. Yeah. It's got rigidity to it.
Ooh, like a stack of cardstock even.
It's fantastic. So you can float this in a frame. That's probably what I'll do. But then when I get I don't know if you saw my story yesterday, but I have the actual print, the paper with the deckled edge. Nice. Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. So Takumi, shout out to the artist who got to do all the badge art this year. I have said for a long time, representation is very important. I know that Japanese style is something that a lot of people can replicate, but I love the fact that they went with a Japanese artist who does that style and is clearly a huge Star Wars fan as well. So that was my one thing I wanted to get when I was at Celebration, besides some of the exclusives from Roosevelt's. So getting this collection, because I got Mando, Vader, Luke, and Ahsoka.
Nice.
Which is a good grip. And I would have got them all, but I realized how expensive my bill at the Celebration store was getting, so I practiced a little bit of self-control. And while we were there, Adam, we got to see the first episode of Andor.
We did.
Together as a group. And so if you were
as one.
It's together as one. If you are planning on going to see Revenge of the Sith this weekend, in your local cinema, I encourage you to do so, because Star Wars needs to be viewed together. I felt like the excitement of watching the first episode of the escape in the TIE Avenger was like absolutely riveting. People are like gasping at how good both the dialogue is, the special effects, the escape, the fact that he just blasted that range trooper into absolute dust.
Yes.
Pretty amazing. So we got a show to talk about. We got 3 shows to talk about.
We have a hell of a show, and dude, I feel so lucky that we got to see this in not quite a theater, but in a giant auditorium with a reasonable sound system for what it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But just the
yeah,
big screen experience was so cool for me. And John Feldman texted me earlier today. You know, he's an old friend. We
sure,
talk occasionally about. You know, he'll of course bring up Star Wars whenever I'll ask
sure.
him about a vegan restaurant, but it's always just like there's like
A
couple
baseline.
things, yeah,
Yeah.
that we hit each other up for. He's like, dude, this show, holy shit, the soundtrack, like this needs to be seen in the theater. And I was like, funny you say that.
I was in the theater this weekend in Japan.
Yeah, yeah. I feel so lucky to have done that because we've had opportunities, fleeting opportunities to go to some of the premieres. You know, our
Yeah.
buddy Jason has gotten hooked up
Yep.
here and there, and we haven't been able to make them because none of us live out there.
Right.
So this was cool. The FOMO finally was on the other side of the equation for us, and it felt good.
Fine. We'll get Feldman on the pod. It's been years.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what? If you're in the chat and you want to see John Feldman from Goldfinger talk about Nerd Out over Andor, just let us know. It's not that Adam isn't going to text him, but he'll text him right now. Maybe we'll see what happens.
Maybe we'll do one. I mean, we could do a dozen wrap-up episodes and all the cool stuff that is happening in this series and what the series means. Maybe we'll do one about the music. Maybe we'll just do a live stream and have some folks on. We're working on some ideas because this, you know, we're not getting 12 weeks out of this like we thought we were going to originally.
Well, and to let people know too, the plan is it's just like as with most Star Wars things around this time of year, it goes from a drip to an absolute T-21 ion blaster. It is just like straight up. So we will be covering Light and Magic season 2. Yes. We will definitely be talking about all of the other. We'll probably do like a celebration drop episode where we've got everybody on. Ryan wasn't able to make it tonight because he's got a sick kid, and after you've been gone for as long as he has, you got to do your thing. So he'll definitely be on because the excitement from Ryan Key over this episode, this series of episodes, is infectious in its own right. Not that we weren't already geeked for it, but just Ryan just being in his full form of being like, is this the best Star Wars we've ever seen? I love when he gets like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Dude, and that is not an uncommon take on it. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we're getting in the press.
Yeah.
You know, people are wasn't Collider. It was something bigger than that. Said
it was like Screen Rant or something.
You know, like quite possibly the best Star Wars ever made, you know?
Yeah.
So people are feeling it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's big storytelling and everything about it is crushing. So I think we should talk about it. Let's get into these.
Should we do Stolen Plans or talk?
Yeah,
we've done. You know what? We've done like immediate reactions because we did that last night.
Yep.
And we talked a bit on the celebration pod. So Stolen Plans. Mike, you want to take this one?
Let's get into it. Andor season.
What have you done with those plans?
Mike, I don't know if you know, this is a professional podcast with like bumpers and shit.
We have a bumper, and I forgot about that because it feels like it's been so long since we've done that. So Jason will cut this out. We appreciate that. For live, watch us fumble. Stolen Plans, Andor season 2, episodes 1 through 3, debuted yesterday, April 22nd on Disney Plus. The first of 4 3-episode blocks, episode 1 being titled 1 Year Later, episode 2, Sigrona Tima, and episode 3, Harvest. Written by Tony Gilroy for the entire season, directed by Ariel Kleiman. She is a director of...
It's a he, turns out.
It's a he. Sorry about that, Ariel. I know you're probably listening to this and seeing how people are reacting to this, which is incredibly positive. The Resort on Peacock, Yellow Jackets, one episode of Yellow Jackets, which is, if you've watched Yellow Jackets, this show is just like it.
So like, should I add it?
It's pretty good. It's dark. It's very dark, but it's very
That's
good.
What
Yeah.
I
Let's see. Starring our regular cast of Andor. So you got Diego Luna, Stellan Skarsgård, Genevieve O'Reilly, and the composer new for this season is Brandon Roberts, who worked on Logan, A Quiet Place Part 2, most notably, but Nicholas Britell, either probably due to scheduling or whatever that is, does not come back as the composer. But I feel like we'll talk about the score a little bit. I feel like this was a very proper evolution of what we got from Andor season 1.
And he's, of course, credited kind of in the same way that John Williams has been on projects that he hasn't worked on, you know, main themes by.
Yes. Yeah. The run times for all 3 episodes was 54 minutes, 47 minutes, and 56 minutes. So again, this is some of the longest form TV we've seen from Star Wars. I think maybe Obi-Wan was up in the 50s, and I think a couple season finales were up there. But certainly these are the longest episodes of Star Wars we get. And I think I'm trying to think of any. Oh, and of course we see Vera Sethu return as Cinta Kaz. We weren't sure where she was going to come back. Faye Marseilles, Vel Sartha, Ben Mendelsohn as Orson Krennic returning, which I think everyone is excited to see. And his younger self, we can maybe talk about that, but certainly we got a pre-Rogue One Director Krennic, which was very exciting for everybody to see in usual form.
Let's talk impressions right now, and we'll just go on that one first. The de-aging in this is so subtle. I mean, one, because the ages aren't that different, right?
Right.
But Ben Mendelsohn he's older enough, and he was already kind of an older-ish guy. He was probably 50, right, when they did Rogue One?
Yeah. So Rogue One came out in 2017, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So that means they film it in 2016, which means that's a pretty significant amount of time. I don't think people sometimes put those connections. Movie makeup is obviously a real thing, but I think the de-aging, like to your point, Adam, was subtle, made him feel like he was younger. He was in director Krennic mode, certainly, but I think when you got to see those moments, and I think for ILM, that's kind of a flex. Don't hide him in red lights on a ship and make him look like he's younger. That was just straight up looking out over the over the scenery in a really soft light. I mean, that's hard to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Half of Jurassic Park is in the dark because they didn't want you to see the wires and stuff. We've come a long way.
And it is so subtle too, because there are if you really know to look for it and you really know what you're looking for, you can kind of see it, or you think you see it.
Yep.
It might be the latter, where I think I'm seeing it, even if I'm not,
Sure.
Because we do have a little insight on the fact that this was done and what the methods were. And you would think with most people, kind of around the mouth, the creases around the mouth, you would kind of address, the crow's feet, things like that. It's small, under the neck, there's a little shadow there. But there are a lot of methods that are being used to do this now. And what's great about all these characters is not only do they have older footage from other movies, but they have older footage from the same universe as the same character. So the source footage is great. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of manipulation that's needed. Maybe I'm totally off. Maybe there's a lot, but in terms of training, whatever model they're using, and it's seamless. I think most people, it's not even crossing their mind. They're not even doing the math like you did with the 2016 gap.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I think for us at this point, we see Krennic and we're hyped. He's been a fan favorite, an amazing Imperial presence, not only in both his wit, his smarts, but also his kind of tenacity. He's not as he's a little more emotional than Grand Moff Tarkin. And we just kind of see his wit a little bit more than, Tarkin didn't give you an option to feel anything. Krennic wants you to feel upset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you think about how he operates. And I'm not, someone in the Patreon needs to correct me on this, but I think if I'm remembering this just before I forget, someone on what's the wheat planet? What did we establish that planet as? Meero. Someone says it's a simple life in regards to like the farming, which I think is a callback to, farming, a man of your talents. And then I think, Galen says it's a simple life, right? So I think it's awesome that we're getting those Rogue One callbacks. Tony Gilroy, for a guy who famously is not really that interested in being self-aware within Star Wars, I think he crushed it with knowing that, especially what we saw at Celebration. The guy literally comes out, he calls out all the people in the Narkina suits. He's fully embraced the Star Wars fandom and understands that the people who follow this franchise are not normal.
Right.
And he loves it. So I think we're going to get a couple of Rogue One pokes in there for sure.
Yeah. I think it's beautiful. And just his vibe and demeanor on stage at Celebration just really warmed the heart, because you just expect him to be kind of grumpy and elitist,
Sure.
So
Yeah,
was
it's
good.
amazing. Okay, so first impressions, observations. We talked a little bit last night, but now that we've sat with it for a little bit longer, what do you think, Adam?
I mean, I have to go right back to the initial feeling as soon as the very first image came on screen at Celebration. Just we didn't say this in our spoiler free kind of reaction. The way that hangar like opened up with the lights turning on was so much sicker than like if I was directing, I just would have done like a hard cut, turn on the lights, you know?
Right, right,
And I'm
right.
watching it going, shit, I won't ever be this good. That was so smart. Like so brilliant.
Yeah. Well, it,
Um,
it establishes that almost like the facility kind of a vibe, you know, it almost gives you like golden eye vibes of being like
yeah.
this, like everything is high tech, you know?
Yeah, you're the mechanics, the mechanical nature, and like you said, the factory. It's like a meta way to open something up. You know, someone goes in, they flip on switches and whatever. Anyway, the composition of everything in that room, the way that they used this like red, black, and white color palette, like that like subtle blue of the TIE fighter and everything was just
Right.
so beautiful. And there's such a calm at the
Mhm.
beginning, followed by complete chaos as soon as Cassian gets in there, can't steer the thing, and then, like you said, just dusts that one dude and just the blasting.
Yeah.
It's so perfect, especially because not only was it calm as he was sneaking around, but the conversation
Oh,
with the what would you call her, the inside person,
yeah.
you know,
She was like a
the mole.
operations tech or something. Yeah.
Yeah,
She's the mole for the rebellion. And
great way to start it.
I think that you're spot on with that. I think what you're really seeing is these moments. We talked about this a little bit in the preview, but I think really what the impression for me in these episodes, especially in the first one, is pacing.
Yeah,
Cassian has to move. Like the whole concept is like he's flying a ship that's too fast for what he knows how to fly.
yeah,
And you look at the time that Cassian has to meet everybody at these specific times, and then you look contrast to Krennic, who's trying to figure out how to move faster.
mm-hmm.
And then you go to Mon Mothma, who's trying to figure out how to slow everything down. So, like, you're watching these three stories in this race of trying to figure out how to get to the goal that they're trying to get to and knowing how complicated each of these parts are. So, Krennic has to play, Krennic has to play this frustrating part of going, like, the reason he reacts so strongly to Dedra is she's like, all this mumbo jumbo marketing isn't going to work. And he's like, I know. Yes, I know. Cassian's over here being like, we have to destroy everything we can because, they need to know we're coming. And then Mon Mothma's over here being like, I don't know if I can wait until the end of the wedding because Tay's losing it right now. Like he's not going to
Yeah,
make it through the weekend without compromising something. And so you're just watching like from a viewer standpoint, you're like, the tension is left, right, up and down. It's literally everywhere. But I just think this is the dialogue, even opening Cassian trying to tell the mole what she's doing this for. I mean, she
yes,
fully is aware that she's going to die. And he's like, your fear makes you stronger. The work that you're doing is making you stronger. Right. And her subtle little tears and oh my gosh, like just everything about it is amazing. Like it's
it's
the delivery is
incredible.
amazing. Everything.
We talked about we probably said this the other night, but like some of the most quotable Star Wars stuff ever already is in these few episodes, and the way this allegory for Earth right now, for America right now, especially, has just leveled up and is so in your face. Even though they wrote it before the shit really hit the fan,
Right.
number one, that tells me, okay, anyone with a big enough brain is realizing
What's
everything that's
happening.
happening in America right
Right.
now is just the history repeating itself. So
Right.
they know how to write this. They know how to almost predict the future in a way.
Yeah.
And it's just it's funny, not ha funny, but funny that all the don't make Star Wars political bros are just pumping their fists at how sick this show is, and all I can think of is the Rage Against the Machine fans that tell Tom Morello to stick to music when he's on social media.
What have you been listening to? That's such a great point. I think, and the difference in the characters.
Yeah.
Of representing different parts of who thinks they have control is really just fast. It's a masterclass in storytelling, because you have, just like, it's now somehow we've, I don't want to get into it, but we obviously can tell that the Mothmas represent an elite class of citizen that's bothered really by what's happening out there, right? So they are sparing no expense for this wedding, for a wedding that Mon wasn't almost tried to call off herself,
right?
Because she knows how bad it is. And they're buying expensive gifts for each other, and they're living life as if it's going on, right? So it's truly like a terrifying reflection of what's happening right now, as people are over here fighting for their lives, fighting for their security, fighting for any level of upward momentum, as other people are over here gifting these Chandrillan gifts that were long thought to be lost to history, that are museum pieces. And it's like, hey, for your wedding, go ahead and have it.
Right.
This is for the people of Chandrilla, but you guys are going to have it in your private collection.
It is reminding me quite a bit, especially on second viewing. You may not get this reference yet, but you should really catch up on the White Lotus.
I gotta wait for it. Is it done? Is
It's
season 3 done? Oh, it is. Okay,
yeah.
I can start watching it then. All right.
The vibe, everyone but Mon Mothma, is really reminding me of the Ratcliffe family in season 3.
Sure.
I've
heard enough of this family thus far that's broken out of just the show.
There's a line from Parker Posey about how good they have it and how no one's ever had it better than them. And it was just like, ding, 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 ding.
Sure.
Perrin is one of these pieces of shit.
Yeah.
So, we're all talking about it culturally, and Tony Gilroy's just
nailing it.
He's just like shoveling it on Earth to us right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. All right.
The other thing, real quick, about, just like general vibes at the top. Well, not vibes. Some things that I thought were really cool, seeing Chandrilla.
Sure.
It felt as cool as seeing Alderaan to me.
Yeah, sure.
For the first time in Kenobi. And I just have to say one more thing about production and setting the pace at the beginning.
Yeah.
The wonder that follows Mon Mothma as she navigates.
Awesome.
And catches up with everyone. It's like a great way to do exposition in a way that's visually, it's doing something visual. It has a pace to it. You're not just sitting there watching people talk.
Right. And
just like the acting chops by Genevieve O'Reilly, I'm just, dude, give this woman an Emmy immediately, right this second, please.
Right. For someone, it's like her and Luthen, their performances need to be in some of the best of at least 2020 and beyond.
Can they get like double Emmys because they, as human beings on Earth, and their characters are also doing the best acting of all time?
It's quite possible. But I to your point, I mean, watching her in this oneer for people who don't know what a oneer is, it's a continuous shot that has no cuts. And so both the background and everyone's role, this gets rehearsed to weeks, sometimes months, where everyone has to know exactly what marks they do. This is an assistant director, an assistant camera telling people when to enter, when to exit. This is background. This is people making sure they remember. They can't screw up the dialogue. So this is this is a very difficult thing to do. And so for her to kind of, you ride along with those emotions for her, of both trying to call out how beautiful the flowers look and, oh, isn't this wonderful? And aren't we happy, to her realizing that Cassian hasn't checked in. Luthen and other people are showing up. She needs to find out what's happening for, what other wheels are in motion. All of this you see on her face, and watch her pop in and out of character is just incredible. The same way that we saw Luthen when he put on the wig, kind of like get into his, just fantastic. And I think the overarch of Gorman, now that we've seen all 3 episodes, I think Gorman is going to be the long story of season 2.
Yes.
From my prediction.
Yeah, it's getting hot and heavy real fast.
Yeah.
All right, shall we discuss some things? Let's just recap where everyone is. I have way too many notes.
Sure.
Like I kind of took in detail.
Sure.
But let's kind of just recap where everyone is at the beginning of this story now, a year later.
Sure.
1 year later, as the title says. We open with Cassian in the Imperial Sinar Test Facility 73, like we mentioned. He's stealing this prototype TIE Avenger. He needs to go to this, at this point, unnamed jungle planet to deliver it to another pilot who turns out to not be there. He's dead. And there are all these, like, quickly becoming feral rebels that are running out of food and everything. That's the mess he gets into. Brasso and Bix are living on the wheat planet that we saw from the trailer. Mina Rao. Turns out it's not the other planets we thought they were. They're hiding out with fake names, right?
Yeah.
Fake names. They're undocumented. There we go with the allegory again.
Here we go.
Bix is still recovering from torture. She's having nightmares of Dr. Gorst, who is a psychopath.
Yep.
Dedra is in Director Krennic's inner circle, along with Partagaz, on a planet that gets named, which we'll talk about in the Den of Antiquities later. The way it's named, I don't know. There's still a possibility that it's what do you call it? Where
where tech dies.
Yeah, it's
in
still possible depending on how they go with the name, and that does apply to some other things here. We'll talk about that later.
Right.
Dedra, she essentially, like, again, shows her, like, her smarts and initiative and her grasp on the situation, and essentially gets handed the project, the Gorman project, or how to handle this, how to twist it by Krennic. She ends up not wanting to take that job later. Syril's been promoted at the Bureau of Standards. He's essentially in the place of the dude that brought him in and showed him his seat first, you know?
Very proud.
Yeah,
very proud.
He's got this vibe like he's George McFly in the new 1985 coming in with his tennis racket. Like, he's just leveled up.
Yeah.
Mon Mothma, her daughter's getting married, like we've talked about. There's drama with her, with Perrin, with Tay Kolma. She's trying to keep track of all the pieces on the board, just barely holding it together. Again, speaking to that oneer where she modulates back and forth in such a masterful way.
Right.
And then the other rebels, Luthen, Clea, Vel, and Cinta they're all there. Everyone's together. I've already kind of basically said this, but we don't see Cinta until the very end. Once again, the bringer of death.
Bro, if you see her on screen, someone's getting it.
Man, how is it going to work out with her and Vel? You know, because there's a mention of they haven't seen each other for a while, and they're kind of being Luthen's kind of like keeping them in their own lanes, you know?
Yeah.
So who's to say whether or not they're, like, sort of broken up, or if they were ever official, like what the vibe is, but it's tense.
You said it last time. You remember Arvel Skeen is like, that's Cinta Cash. She's probably the most dedicated to the cause of anybody. Mm-hmm. So we've got this establishment that, like, she's like, oh, I'm here to feel feelings, but I've got a job to do. And you really saw that with Val kind of like looking over and realizing it's her. And she's like, you didn't call. You didn't let me know you were coming here. You're just here to take Tay for a joyride.
Yeah.
It's so dark, man.
Coming like the Blink 182. What?
The Tom DeLonge. Yeah. I again, going back to the idea of this whole concept of, even when we get to understand, and guess what? If you're watching this show, you're okay with a couple spoilers, right? Finding out that we're on Yavin is really cool. But by the point when we land with the rebels, I think what sometimes we have to remind ourselves is that the rebellion is not a united front. And it's not necessarily just pointed. Saw Gerrera was not the only rebel to not agree with the front, right? Mm-hmm. And just because you have a mutual enemy does not mean that you are friends. And it does not mean that your group is necessarily completely united. And as with most things, how do you disrupt rebellion? you turn them on each other. And
Yeah.
so little things like not having enough food, little things like not agreeing with who's in charge, all of this stuff is kind of shows where those strong leaders end up rising to the top. And that's actually where Saw Gerrera fits perfectly for his own partisan group. But I think and I think Jason brought this up, that group specifically was brought up in season 1. Saw mentions that group.
There's a quote right here. Well, actually, it's in the Den of Antiquities.
Okay, we'll get to it.
We'll read the exact quote later. But what I think is really, really masterful writing is the way that, and this is something that we've seen more in the Disney era of Star Wars, where it's not so black and white, good guys, bad guys,
right?
Like A New Hope. The rebellion has people that have been pushed so far that they have to become adopt the ways of their enemy.
Right.
Just as Luthen says in his monologue in season 1. And we're really seeing really strong parallels between the rebels and the Imperials with exactly what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Just because we have a common enemy doesn't mean we're friends. Doesn't mean we're not competing for different reasons in different ways, on the good and bad side, but still competing methods, competing like philosophies,
Sure.
And it's done so well that even in season 1, like, you root for Dedra.
Yeah.
You're like, damn, yeah, get it. Pop that arrow roll. Get to work. You know what I mean? Like, sick. You're going to show these higher ups that you know what's going on better than they do,
Yeah.
And to me, that's the biggest marker of great writing, when you can root for someone who is a terrible villain.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And we're seeing some more power dynamics go on within the ISB. I think for people who know their history, we are very quickly approaching what would be the Night of 1,000 Knives. That was there were a lot of events that led up to the involvement, the mobilization of Germany into starting their process of what would eventually become the final solution. But it was uniting people under the idea that they were struggling and that we need a united idea. And so you literally see the war room in what's the name of the planet is the Divide, right? I'm looking for
that's the area
the Malthine Divide. But what I'm saying, when we meet them, you've got ISB, you've got marketing people, you've got this idea that they kind of do this like 1950s, Gorman, a beautiful planet that's got, and they're watching it almost like they're being told, this is the story we're going with. And like, do you ever remember why you were feeling that way? Because we put that in your head,
right.
And you're really seeing a combination of like marketing combined with, this is deep data, this is espionage, this is all these things. Like the ISB is working all different angles to figure out how to get exactly what they're going to get, because they know that the risk is destroying this whole planet. So at this point, the Empire is still trying to maintain order under the radar. They aren't necessarily like trying to be, because again, like we are not that far removed from how Palpatine came to power, which was the Jedi made an attempt on my life and they are now unsafe for you. And people who don't know what the Jedi were so sparse, there was no one there to defend themselves. So for Palpatine to be able to say, everything we're doing is going to make you stronger, everything we're going to do is make you better, and you're going to be safe and security and all these things, like you're seeing the thought machine, the war machine fully turning and figuring out how exactly to screw over most of the people of the galaxy through force. And they're just trying to figure out how much and how quick.
And I'm almost positive we mentioned this last season, but Palpatine, just like a Sith, just like he pits potential apprentices against each other to then let the stronger one become his true apprentice, or use their strengths against each other to accomplish goals that he wants. He does that with his officers, and whether that is literally giving two of them different projects that compete, like Tarkin and Krennic,
right,
or just starting to just even basic stuff. It seems like, the this whole the Gorman project about, the power, the idea of stable and unlimited power that will transform the economy, the
Right.
galactic economy, whatever. It's ultimately just like they're just mining. They're trying to get this. What is it called?
The spider silk.
No, it's the mineral that they're.
Oh, the
it's later in.
Oh man, what's the name of it?
It's in the den later.
Okay.
Calcite. Sorry.
Calcite. Yeah.
It's needed for lens coating for the Death Star, right? But point being, he says, or Krennic says, Colonel Yularen and Governor Tarkin will be notified by the Emperor at the time of his choosing.
Right.
So this project is top secret, even to these other very highly ranked officers. It's just like a Sith, just like you would.
Right. Yeah, it's just.
And then Dedra, last thing we'll say about this.
Sure.
The line that she hits Krennic with that sells him on her, because it's you're very quiet, tell me what you're thinking kind of thing. And she's like, all right, well, what you need is Gorman rebels that you can depend on to do the wrong thing. So it's not just a marketing spin for her. Like, that's elementary shit for her.
Right.
She's like, no, you need to manipulate people to make them do the wrong thing,
right.
to convince everyone of who's on the right or wrong side.
Right.
Not just marketing isn't enough. You need to create action.
Yeah, she's literally calling for the Reichstag fire. Yeah. And for people who are curious what that is, I always try to history is a terrifying thing for people who choose to ignore it. And I think there's enough history within here for people to look back and realize that when we are in the march to war, there's a lot of innocence lost. And a lot of the idea of the past is told by those who win. There's a lot of really harrowing moments that you look back and think, how did people fall for this? How was this a thing? And you're really kind of seeing a dramatization of it in Star Wars that I think is going to, I hope, makes people look back and go, how did we get to a lot of these global conflicts that in still some ways exist today and in still some ways are united today, and why the reason that they're there. Us being in Japan, when the reality of there are places in that country, on that island, that we did terrible things not that long ago. So I hope it has conversations for people. I hope that they're able to go back and learn a little bit about this. But yeah, you're exactly right. The propaganda agency, the Ministry of Enlightenment, all of these very creepy, terrible things that feel so familiar are all rooted in historical accuracy, which is terrifying. And maybe the reason why we're acknowledging how incredible the show is for us to be able to see it within Star Wars, which is a comprehensible way in terms of character development for people to see it. So,
speaking of creepy and terrible things, Dedra and Syril are together in a relationship.
Wasn't expecting that so fast,
dude. I mean, now it's perfect. It's perfect. That definitely wasn't on our bingo card, but it's perfect.
When we were at Celebration and Kyle and Denise are talking, and someone asks a question, or someone says, what is the status of their characters? They both so awkwardly in front of an entire thousands of people were like, they're really gross and it's really weird. They just straight up said, we're super awkward. This is terrible. And as soon as we see Dedra figuring out, do I want black or do I want white? Yeah. And were you expecting someone besides Syril's mom to come?
I didn't know. Well, I was so taken aback that I was like, is this a dinner party? Is this going to be multiple people? Why did she just smile? Why did her face do that?
Right.
So I didn't have any exact expectations. I was going second by second, just trying to get my mind to process what I was seeing.
Right. Yeah. There was a lot of it going, I was like, oh my gosh, is this where we see Galen Erso? Or what are we going to see at this point? But the idea of Jake on YouTube goes, hard to see Dedra being romantic, dominatrix for sure.
Yeah.
But her emotion of trying to seem happy,
Yes.
and then knowing her, when we hear more about her background, well, what do your parents do? She goes, oh, I'm kinder youth, which again, what are, Hitler youth were, kinder is a German word, right? Just a very, it was so uneasy. But again, as a guy with an Italian mom, I'm like, man, I wish my girlfriend stood up for me like that. That sounds pretty nice. But just even seeing Syril like at full capacity with his mom constantly belittling him so bad that he has to go lay in the bed to like just fall apart. And then to have Dedra basically say, you are the only thing in his life that controls him this way. Now I'm in control of you, was boss mode.
Like, look, lady, here's how it's going to go.
100%. 100%. And his mom was like, okay.
It reminded me a little bit of my grandma, who was a hard ass lady. And my grandpa was a hard ass dude, blue collar guy. But my grandma was like, okay, here she goes. And I felt that. But it's just further character development for Dedra and Syril. He's in there laying on the bed just like a baby.
Right.
And then she's running the shit, she's wearing the pants in the situation. And ultimately he's climbing the ladder. But my prediction, I'm going to say it right now, Dedra is going to completely betray him. And he's either going to die or end up in prison or just end up in squalor. She's going to shit on him when it comes down to it.
Yeah, yeah. And that's either, now that we're kind of seeing this play out, it's either Syril is not going to know what to do when she gets betrayed by the Empire. Mm-hmm. Krennic is not the kind of guy to support a team. He wants the ideas of how he can see his vision be done. We saw him going around Grand Moff Tarkin, him going directly to Vader to be like, I'm telling you, like, I don't like the way it's working. This is my project. Mm-hmm. And Vader just being like, all right, enough, choke on your aspirations. But I think, I agree with you. I think that there's something going to be very interesting for Dedra, either maybe having a different background than what she led on. She works in intelligence. It's not crazy. I mean, and her also saying, what's his Uncle Harlow?
Yeah.
Uncle Harlow is this mythical character, right? And we're learning more about Syril's dad, who's not around. And so we're getting a little bit more information about Syril, but also the fact that she like already did a background check on Syril is like that. If that ain't love, then I don't know what love is. So that was, I don't know. That's something, man. That's the kind of relationship I want to be in.
And the interesting thing is, it turns out Uncle Harlow has a criminal record. Mm-hmm. So this family, like Syril's family, they all have insecurities that manifest in different ways. Right. They're scraping for whatever power over themselves and their life and others in their life they can have. And his mom, it manifests in controlling her son because she knows like they're this trashy ass family with like Uncle Jailbird Joey, like
right.
But what she can have control over and like the power she can have is over her son, even though her brother is a shithead too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it was. I loved that. I loved everything about that. So let's see, where are we right now? We're kind of bouncing around a little bit. Are we on episode 2?
We are bouncing around, but we could talk about, let's hit on just like one more thing and then get into the den, because we've bounced around enough. We have a pretty good idea of where everybody are,
right?
Where everyone is. You mentioned, go ahead.
Let's do this. I want to get your take on this because I think what the part about where I have argued this now, if you have talked to me standing in line in Celebration, you have talked to me. My hot take on Star Wars is that Rogue One ruined Star Wars in the best way. right? And I will maintain this as the one of multiple hosts on Think to Maker, that this show is doing everything absolutely perfect. One of the best scripts we've ever had, but fundamentally it loses the fantasy part of the opera. It loses some of the fun. And so where we've seen this idea of traditional dynamic sexual power dominance with Jabba and Leia, where we used to refer to her as Slave Leia. Now I think we're kind of embracing the idea that she's Hutt Slayer Leia, because Hutts are not easily killed, and she did it by tapping into the Force and taking out Jabba herself, like literally a criminal that ruled the underworld for however many years he was in charge. I have a hard time with what happened with Bix and the approach of the Imperial officer. The torture seemed more like it was a mental torture, but she's clearly the idea that he came into the room. The doctor came into the room and almost like went to touch her, and she just freaked out, right? Which is classic PTSD. And, obviously as someone who's raising a daughter, these are things that, you have to think about. And I know that for many of our listeners, this is a common issue that unfortunately a lot of women have come across in their life. It's hard for me to see this in Star Wars, because once again, it breaks down the space fantasy and brings us into the real world, which, like, in some ways I've always relied on Star Wars for escaping.
Less fun adventure and more just drama.
Right. So I'm curious what the listeners saw about this. I know that this was a hot button issue internally with Lucasfilm, because I think for a lot of people, there's always that conversation about going, if you don't want to see it on screen, some people will just refuse to believe it's happening. And there is something raw and visceral about the concept of it. But, and the Imperials are not good people. And I hate to say it, but like, there's plenty of times in history where we see soldiers, people on the fight that are dealing with their own issues, unfortunately put in front of people that make terrible decisions. But it was kind of one of these things where I go, I know what's happening here. I understand what's happening. I think Bix is a character. Bix is a complex character that has unfortunately kind of been the target of, at this point, Tim betraying her all the way in the very beginning, being so jealous of her maybe seemingly having a relationship with Cassian that he literally sells Ferrix out to the Empire. And so you see, once again, this male insecurity coming across here. And I think it's very interesting. I think it's normal to have a reaction to it. And I think in some ways, I appreciate Gilroy for putting this in here and this realistic approach to conflict. But it's one of those things that I'm just like, I struggle with it in Star Wars, right? Because we're using Star Wars as a real life reflection of what's happening. But, I had a hard time with this, from, again, my perception of like where I still want skeleton crew. I still want lightsabers. I still want hope and all those things. And this was tough to watch.
Yeah. The fact that we heard the word rape in Star Wars is wild.
Right.
The lessons that we're being taught by this aren't new. The same lessons that were taught all the way back in A New Hope in 1977, plus a little moral ambiguity on either side.
Sure.
But it's not new. It's just a story that's made for adults now. So the way I see it, I agree with you. And when you first said it, I didn't quite get it. But then I instantly did once you elaborated that. Now that Pandora's box is open, this is what all the adults who are grumpy about new Star Wars want exclusively. They don't want the other shit. This is all they want. They want HBO prestige TV drama, which is great. But I think we need the other stuff. So as long as we still have the full spectrum, all the way from, what's the little kids show?
Jedi Adventures,
all the way to this. As long as we have the full spectrum, cool. Like we go from Bluey to House of the Dragon.
Sure.
Sick.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
at this point, I'm just looking at Star Wars, and I think this would help everyone, wherever you sit on that spectrum of the fandom,
Yeah.
to look at Star Wars like you look at the entire spectrum of TV and film entertainment that's out there.
Right.
There's something for everyone. You don't have to like it all. If you are truly just into film and TV, and you know, you can go see Toy Story, and you can go see, you know, The Departed, and enjoy them both, you're going to be happy. If you can only see one or the other, you're going to be disappointed, unless you just accept the fact that it's not all going to be for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for us, what ends up being difficult about some of these conversations too, with people who don't look at it through what I would say, honestly, media literacy, which is I'm realizing in some ways, when your algorithm is pushing you to watch something, it's crazy how many people are like only blockbusters at this point, or only watching blockbusters because that's what's being marketed to them. But, you know, you look at it from a standpoint of going, you know, there's people who are like, I only like Andor, I only like Rogue One because it relates to me. You know what I mean? Like they can't watch Skeleton Crew and go, oh, this kid doesn't even like know how to use a lightsaber. Like this is so, you know, like they want the grit. But we already have Blade Runner. We already have Dune.
Yep.
We have these things that I think in some ways, like I am sitting here, like, again, for people who know that, like, I like to make jokes about stuff like this. You know, when I say Rogue One ruined Star Wars, I mean that fundamentally it created a divide. And as we're trying to get, as people are saying this is the best Star Wars ever and stuff like that, you know, I have a hard time with that, because in some ways I miss the fact that, you know, 8-year-olds and 80-year-olds both agree Darth Vader is awesome. He's got a laser sword. He looks badass, right? And like next of Star Wars fans that we grew up on, because our parents, our moms, our uncles passed Star Wars down to us because it was cool to watch together. This show is not doing that, but I understand that this is for a specific group. So when you show something like sexual assault so boldly, so bluntly, so with the lights on, it just makes things difficult. In that regard, I think, to continue to have those conversations. But I think already I'm like looking at the YouTube comments, like people are having great discussions about it. I just think we need to keep that going. So, you know, it was hard to watch. I mean, there's no way around it.
Yeah. Well, that said, my dad did let me watch Commando when I was like 9.
Sure. I saw way too many movies way too young. So I'm with you on that. Maybe that's the reason why we're so screwed up at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't do it to the other people.
Yeah.
All right. We're already approaching an hour, so you want to get into the Den of Antiquities?
Yeah, let's do it.
For over 1,000 generations.
It is the dark saber, Torquedon.
Oh gosh.
It's a Calicori.
A Sith wayfinder.
Dark science. Cloning. Secrets only the Sith knew.
The Den of Antiquities. It's deep and dark and full of surprises. All right, let's get into it. We've got the first location, Test Facility 73, is on Sinar. Now, if you know your long-standing Star Wars lore, Sinar is the company that produces the Sinar fleet systems, which is designed of the TIE Fighter, probably the most available aerial ship of the Empire. And Wraith Sinar, the CEO of Sinar Fleet Systems, is the whole planet named after them? Is it a familial name? Is it Rockefeller at this point within military might? We don't know, but that's where the planet is actually called. As Cassian is waiting for his contact in the test facility, there are 2 range troopers that walk past them, one of them with a rocket launcher that later shows up when he steals the TIE. Now, for people who like their production, the English production, the Solo, Rogue One, this would be a different side than the American side, but the range troopers were kind of their version of the snow troopers. They first appeared in Solo during the train heist scene with the magnetic boots, and we finally see them without the boots, which I think is pretty cool. The Blizzard Force in the 501st, of course, has already labeled and figured out what these boots are, and they are straight up disco boots, man. They look awesome. I'm probably going to get a pair just to have one. Kicking boots, man. Cassian's contact tells him the password for the night is Kafrene. Now, if you're like, what the heck is that? The Ring of Catherine is the first planet. It's the two boulder, almost look like asteroids tied together with a ring in the middle of it, where we first meet Cassian in Rogue One, kind of showing Cassian's true colors. Hey, man, I got to get out of here. Sure thing. Let me get you out of here. Blast him. That's a very Cassian move at this point. We've actually seen this now multiple times. Cassian is not afraid to blast a dude for the rebellion. The TIE fighter that Cassian steals is a TIE Avenger, which is from the Now Legends 1994 PC game, Star Wars TIE Fighter. It's one of the most advanced ships we've ever seen. It's got a hyperdrive, deflector shield, advanced weapon systems. We got Gatling guns in Star Wars, baby. It's things like an A-10 Warthog. The thing's just an absolute badass of a war machine. And as he tries to escape the test facility, he is pursued by several TIE Advances, V1s. Curve sides, not to be confused with the X1, which is Vader's iconic TIE Advanced with the more modular sides. Think round, modular, once Vader gets to it.
Patron Kalei Kiloa says, what a way to tie together the franchise.
Oh, Kelly, come on, man. It was great to hang with him in at Celebration. A total, like, everything about it. Patrons like making inside jokes. I'm like, oh man, you guys are the best. Yeah. And I think in some ways, like if you are a fan of the Empire and all their drip, all their look, you are feasting this whole already 3 episodes in.
You know what else is cool right here real quick?
Sure.
NATO Potato just brought up the targeting HUD in that TIE Advanced, right? TIE Avenger, sorry.
Yeah.
In the TIE Avenger. And notice how it's a true heads-up display where the targeting, it grabs the objects out there and it kind of moves with them. It tracks with them.
Yeah.
And that's something we've never seen in Star Wars. It's always been, on a little screen down at the bottom. It's a very simple, geometric kind of representation of the targets.
Right.
So it's really cool that something that we've never seen otherwise in canon Star Wars that is a prototype that may not exist in the other things because of this mission.
Right. Yeah.
We see this technology, so it's a good way to kind of keep it in canon and not break and have to retcon other things.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and for a lot of places, it's like, an F-16 is still being flown all over the world. Right. And that's, you're talking a standard TIE fighter versus this TIE Avenger is like an F-35. And there's obviously Lockheed Martin is we're 2 models previous in the test facilities right now, so it's like you're kind of seeing the difference of like the TIE fighter has no shields, no hyperdrive, targeting computer is about as basic as you can get, but they're cheap. And that's why the TIEs were kind of the Empire's strength was not so much in fanciness, it was in numbers. Let's see. Physics buddy Joe says, as someone currently shopping for a new vehicle, this is how I feel every time I test drive a new car.
Truly, man.
100%. You get in, you're like, what is this giant screen? Oh my God, there's cameras everywhere.
What is beeping at me? What are all these lights?
Why
does this thing turn this way?
This car can park itself. Ooh, it's fast too. That's exactly correct. You're spot on, Joe. It's great hanging with you in Japan. In the living unit where Bix and Brasso work, there's a photo of Marva hanging. It's like a painted little portrait. I thought that was fantastic. Yes. The group Cassian runs into when he lands on the unnamed jungle planet, what could that be? Is called the Maya Pei Brigade, mentioned by Saw Gerrera in season 1, which the quote was, Krieger's a separatist, Maya Pei's a neo-republican. The Gorman Front, the Partisan Alliance sectorists, human cultists, galaxy partitionists, they lost all of them. Lost. I think to have, and again, once again, if we have a common enemy, it still does not make our philosophies different. And you can see that clearly, structurally, they are not an organized group, but they're willing and armed. And Jason brought up this morning that he thinks that there's a group on Facebook that identifies weapons within Star Wars. And there's a very good chance that one of those rebels is using, indeed, the bug salt shooter that maybe you've had the pleasure of shooting flies with, because it's a goofy looking thing. You pump it, it shoots a little like bullet of salt at flies.
Like a burst, like a shotgun?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's super funny. So the fact is that might be canon in Star Wars. That's amazing. Mon Mothma's existent Erkin Samaj appears in an older, in the opening one, or at the Mon Mothma estate. He was introduced in Star Wars Rebels in the scene where she actually advances and calls out the Gorman people. So that's a little, yeah. He's got the rebellion hat on, the rebellion helmet. That's a great little throwback right there. And also we got a Naboo shout out. The Malthine Divide, which is where we're kind of deciphering this as it comes along, which is the location of the Imperial facility where Krennic's meeting happens. Malthi was the city in Legends on the planet Caleen, which is where we think it's not Tarkin's home planet.
Right. So the question is the Malthine Divide like the Grand Canyon? So is what's being called out on screen a location on a planet, not the name of the planet?
Yeah.
So either Malthi, the city, is either they're pulling from the Legends thing, or they're just using the name and doing a twist on it as a tribute, and this could still be on Tarkin's planet.
Yeah.
Because even, the Sinar title on screen, like we mentioned earlier, is that just saying, is it the city of Sinar that's named after, like you said, like a Rockefeller type thing, Rockefeller
Right.
Plaza, whatever?
Right.
Or is that planet called Sinar? They don't specify, and there's not a pure consistency in the way the title cards are made with the header and then the subtitle.
Right.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Just cool to know that that's from Legends, the Malthi reference, maybe.
Yeah. At Mon Mothma's daughter's wedding, they cheers with Sagrona Tima. And the phrase which was first heard in Clone Wars Season 2 with Hondo Onaka, first season. The full version is Sagrona Tima Salam Sene, which is cheers to health, insight, and hope. It's actually interesting to hear that their cheers have multiple parts, and that it's something that seems to be Chandrillan in origin that has kind of become a tabuite across the galaxy over time, which I think is a great way to build lore. And I think that's it's fan. We're going to start saying that without a doubt.
Shalom.
As we were just starting to pick up, what were we saying in Japan?
Oh,
It starts with the C. Kampai. We were starting to figure that out. So I think being able to add Sagrona Tima to our list is another way to support Tabuate.
Yeah.
The statue from the wedding, a gift from Davos Skulden, is from the Rakatan Empire, which is an ancient species of Knights of the Old Republic and Legends. And the statue doesn't look totally like the Rakatans themselves. They kind of have eyes. They almost look like reverse hammerhead sharks. They've got eyes down here and big kind of Harry and the Henderson looking heads. But they do look like the Force priestess, the Wills, that is from the Clone Wars, that are kind of adjacent to the Mortis gods. They have this appearance of being able to kind of speak to you almost like your curiosity in the Force, almost being able to answer questions of the Force, which I think is really cool.
And they have those draped sort of robes as they float, just like this statue has. Very
right.
contoured and draping.
Yeah, they almost kind of have like a very ghostly appearance. These big white faces with these little eyes, almost kind of looks like almost like Studio Gilby or something along those lines, like Spirited Away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you remember those from the Clone Wars, look at the statue again. You're like, whoa, that's interesting. The unnamed jungle, of course, which I think is really cool, ends up being Yavin 4. As Cassian flies away, you can see that this rebel base has been occupied, or it's attempting to be occupied, but it seems to be just far enough out of the reach of the Empire that they are able to set up eventually some level of communication and some level of activity. Although I want to know what that big Tyrannosaurus that big Stegosaurus or whatever that thing was, that went through the camp. Like I was like, what was that thing? That was crazy.
Yeah, it was almost like a rhino, kind of in a way, but more dinosaur-like.
Yeah, It was awesome. I wasn't expecting that. I figured something was going to happen, or we'd get some other ties or something, some kind of tracking. But it seems like for Cassian to kind of pull one of his moves, get himself out of getting himself out of struggle as always, and then doing what he does, hot wires the tie. All of this stuff is just classic Cassian Andor. So first. Yeah, I don't know. First 3 episodes were incredible, and I think we'll get into how do you want to do bingo results. We didn't crush it. Nobody crushed it yet, but maybe we'll do those in the Discord.
Yeah, let's do that because I think we need to litigate some of them. So let's do that for the bonus segment, and we'll stream into Discord to kind of litigate that, and then we'll post the results.
Yeah,
I don't think we got any. I think they maybe got a couple, and I know there may be 1 or 2 that are completely off the board. We'll have to review. So that'll be the bonus segment for patrons. Yeah. All right. Let's do I Love You, I Know. We only really have one because we just, mentioned some other funny comments up top, but let's do that right now.
I love you.
I know.
Let's do our favorites, actually, and then we'll read this one from screen name Mihan Solo.
Sounds good.
What about you? What was your favorite moment or scene?
Are we doing like episodes like 1 through 3?
I would say out of the whole group or the whole chunk.
It's definitely dark. I think it's very easy for us to go. That opener with Cassian breaking out is easily the most memorable, I think, of the group. But as someone who works in marketing, I actually loved the insight looking into the ISB. I liked the idea that there were multiple smart people with their approaches of how they were going to solve this Gorman problem. And I liked seeing the Imperial think tank at work because we got scenes of that sitting in the ISB, but now you have these other people who all aren't trying to necessarily outsmart each other. Now we're putting these things into practice through not only just we're just doing surveillance, we're doing intelligence, because ultimately with Ferrex, that didn't work. And so I think the way that they're approaching a different strategy, I thought was really interesting because I felt like I was kind of looking a little bit into the mirror of saying, when you're sitting in a room with you've got data people who are telling you this data isn't checking out. You've got marketing people who are creative and they're figuring out how to get the message in a way that feels approachable for people. And then you've also got the bosses there who are going, I don't care what you do, just make it work. Right. So I appreciated looking into the thought machine of the Empire, as terrible as I know their decisions will be ultimately. But I thought that was the coolest part for me.
I think I'm going to answer this from a filmmaker lens perspective. On a writing level, I'm going to give a dual answer, cheating as always.
Sure.
On a writing level, the conversation between Cassian and the mole at the Sinar facility, I keep forgetting her name.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It was brilliantly written, inspirational, quotable, but mainly it showed how Cassian has gone from this person who is just a tourist. He just wants to be done. He went through all of the events of season 1, and now he is, for this person, Nemec.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was to this person what Nemec was to him.
That's a great call.
And he's got that smile on his face despite all this terrible shit going on. You remember how Nemec was he was just plucky and kind of motivated,
nervous.
Like, you're my ideal reader. Let's go. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Cassian takes this opportunity to say, and this is also a great contrast to everyone else distrusting each other. Luthen wanted to kill Cassian at the end of season 1 because he had seen him. He knew too much, right? Cassian instead says, "No, look at me. You deserve to look me in the face. Essentially, you've given up everything." So that dialogue, everything about it, how and why it was written that way, in the greater arc, was brilliant. I loved it. Yeah. And then on a directorial level, it's the oneer where Mon is moving through her estate and catching up with everybody. That's a little bit of a writing thing too. That's definitely a writing thing. How they pull off all that exposition in a way that has momentum, And, it's early, so you need that. So I thought it was brilliant. And I mean, again, shout out to like everyone, like you described, that it takes to pull off something like that. I'm just thinking about like the half dozen people behind her, or ahead of her that are moving and like pointing which direction. It's like, someone's like got their hand on the small of the back of like the camera operator, like guiding them, make sure they don't run into shit. Like just beautiful, beautiful work.
Yeah.
And a physical set. I'm assuming like a giant physical set with just big blue
Agreed.
kind of panels in the gaps.
Yeah.
Probably no, I mean, we'll find out when we see the behind the scenes stuff, but probably no volume right there. Even though I guess you could do that. That would be some theatrical shit, moving like rocks in and out, whatever. But
100%.
Hidden cuts, all that stuff.
Yeah.
From Patreon though, screen name Mihan Solo said, I absolutely loved the scenes with Krennic and the rest of the Imperial officers. The dialogue was exceptional and truly outlined how tactical the Empire was and strategic. Like mind-blowing how fast and just absolutely brutal they were talking about taking out a planet.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as I saw what happened with Brasso, we didn't even mention. So stupid.
Yeah.
I'll just mention really quickly. It seems like a wah-wah kind of death for a character that was so strong, but I think that's absolutely the point.
100%.
This dude who was a hero on Ferrix to go out, like, just probably get, just catching one lucky shot from that trooper as he's crossing the field, unceremoniously dying in the middle of nowhere.
And then
it
left.
shows what this whole thing is all about.
Right.
So he says, as soon as I saw what happened with Brasso, I immediately thought to bingo and thought people are not going to be happy to cross that one off. Like it happened so soon. Also, family dinner at Dedra's place had me laughing the entire time. Also, that was Yavin, right? Yep, you were correct. The whole downfall of Tay was also crazy to watch, and the whole thing unraveled. That amazing Cinta reveal at the end.
She's cold, man.
We just know Tay won't be seen again.
She is cold. And that goes to show, again, same thing. Mon Mothma, this person who helped her. I mean, he literally lays it out for her. Everybody got what they want except for me. I actually seem like I'm starting to lose everything.
Mm-hmm.
How does he get repaid? That's brutal. That's brutal, dude. That is brutal. Quote of the week. Are we doing this?
Yeah, so we're gonna bring back the quote of the week. I realized we haven't done this in a long time. We used to do it even for weeks where we didn't, where we weren't covering a show. We would just kind of bring one from outside of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a good time to bring it back, and what we're gonna do going forward, and we might do this for every episode, actually. The Master Jedi tier patrons, the top level patrons, they deliberated, they nominated a few, and then went to the rest of the patrons. And I don't know if they did an official poll in there or what they did, but they're giving us the quote of the week.
Love it.
And we'll do that going forward. Mike, you want to read this one?
Sure thing.
And actually, I have the audio after.
Oh, yeah. Put it in there. This makes it worth it. This right now, being with you, being here at the moment you step into the circle. Look at me. I made this decision long ago. The Empire cannot win. You'll never feel right unless you're doing what you can to stop them. You're coming home to yourself. You've become more than your fear. Let that protect you.
If I die tonight, was it worth it? You've done this before. You must have thought about it.
This makes it worth it. This. Right now. Being with you, being here at the moment you step into the circle. Look at me. You made this decision long ago. The Empire cannot win. You'll never feel right unless you're doing what you can to stop them. You're coming home to yourself. You've become more than your fear. Let that protect you.
Oof.
Thank you.
Dude.
Oof.
Goosebumps, man.
Masterfully delivered.
Watching that at Celebration, I was trying so hard to contain that memory and not let it slip away from my brain.
Yeah.
But the thing that I think we all remember was you're coming home to yourself.
Yeah. And to like, we knew as soon as we saw the opening, we knew that Cassian was going to get in tie and just wreck shit, right? I was not expecting to be absolutely floored by that part, because I assumed that he was just going to sneak in and, and to know that he had a mole on the inside. Oh man, to have that and to see her. I mean, her name is Naya. Thanks, Physics Buddy Joe. That was an amazing moment for an actor that I've never seen or heard of. I was on pins and needles, hoping that she wasn't going to fall apart. It's just incredible.
Well done, miss. All right. We're going to get out of here. And like we said, deliberate with the patrons over the bingo results and the bonus segment. So if you want to watch that happen, because we're streaming those these days, and that's included also in the ad-free version that's available via Patreon. Go to patreon.com/ThinkTheMakerPod. We really need your help right now. It's a weird time. We're kind of, the revenue's down. Things are working on some stuff. We need your help in this interim time as we try to move to whatever the next phase of Thank the Maker is, because it's not free to make this. Time is not free. So
it's true.
If you enjoyed the podcast, at the very least, just share it. Tell your friends. Share it on Instagram, TikTok if you still have that, X if you still have that. Let people know, and rate and review. Do all the stuff. Smash the buttons. Yada yada yada.
Lick the subscribe. Right.
Slop them up. All right. Everybody, we love you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And until next week, may the Force be with you. If you enjoy Thank the Maker, you can support us by following and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Or you can support us directly at patreon.com/ThankTheMakerPod, where you can get access to our Discord server, exclusive content, exclusive merch, our recording live stream, and more. Our patrons quite literally make Thank the Maker possible.